but at the moment it'll be fortunate if we can keep it even for a few hours. But it can help. It can build towards the things we want to accomplish. So we can begin by giving ourselves an experience of internal peace. Peace in reality is the attitude, the realization of inner reality. Inner reality is always at peace, because there is nothing that can assail it. Outside reality cannot assail it. It can only go in conflict with it, but it can never change it, or diminish it, or destroy it, because the higher reality is the highest thing in existence, so far as we know, and nothing can take it away. But we can, through various attitudes, restrict its manifestation, but it will continue to be there and come through as it can if it takes 1,000 lives to do it. The reality, the divine reality of peace, happiness, truth, understanding, love, service, these things must ultimately rule the world. And until then, the world will never have complete peace. And this fact that it will rule the world is the result of the fact that it will rule the human beings who inhabit the world. It will make possible for society gradually to come into harmony with the higher realities of existence. And so we can start by doing the best we can in various ways. We can give ourselves a kind of Christmas present by allowing the realization of our higher reality to come through. It will help us to eliminate worry. It will take away this constant pressure of unhappy memories. It will help us to adjust to a physical condition that is far from satisfactory. But the fact that the physical condition is difficult is due to the fact that too long we have failed to cure it. If we have spent most of our lifetime in the material reality factor, and we suddenly try to experience the divine realities, we find conflict, we find confusion, and even perhaps a certain amount of emotional or even physical disturbance. But we have to do it finally. So we can take, for instance, the realization that when we're in a church, most people are quiet. We don't have very many arguments in front of the altar. Things are more or less at peace. And in Europe particularly, or in any of the non-Christian temples, wherever sacredness is dwelling, the atmosphere is really always calm and pleasant. People coming into a church have been chattering as tourists on the steps, but when they get inside, they keep quiet. They enter into a sacredness that is away from the world, a sacredness which is respected. And the respect is that the gentleman takes off his hat and the lady has some little prayer or a beautiful thought in her mind. But in the church or in the cathedral itself, there is a quietness of peace. And the building itself, in the old days when they really built them, was designed by a Vitruvian master, a great artificer, who put into that building all the symbolisms of eternal truth. The building was a physical symbol, a crystallization of worship. And this carries on, and we feel it when we go there. So we can also have the same kind of feeling when we go away from the objective realities and take our stand firmly in the spiritual realities. We can find peace and comfort. On the mental and physical level, we may have an argument. But in the higher aspect of things, this higher reality says that all life is one, that our neighbor is only ourselves in a different body. This is one of the points of Oriental philosophy, that the stranger is ourselves in another body. And this is something we should all try to realize. Now, we'll be disillusioned and disappointed because other people who do not live in that type of reality will not understand us. But if we try to please them, we will be as sick as they are. Therefore, we have to hold our own integrities, even though it may seem that we are not appreciated. But one thing that we can always do is to cultivate quietude and peace and find the habit of happiness, something that we can all develop. Happiness is the ability to rise above the problems of the material realities and take refuge in those principles and causes which we all must face. Also, we have to realize that this problem of reality has a certain kind of termination. We know that the material reality is impermanent. We know that although wars may go on for thousands of years, the individual is limited in his material adjustment to circumstances. He has his 80 years, or maybe 50 now. But in the end, material reality must cease for all of us. Maybe it will go into a subjective state and come out again later. But for a time at least, we cannot maintain the continuity of our material realities. We can have a large and beautiful home, but we can't take it with us. We can have a tremendous reputation, but it gradually fades into silence. Unless that reputation is founded in spiritual reality, then the individual has a strange immortality in the hearts of his fellow creatures. But always the material realities are impermanent. Therefore, they have to be secondary. They have to be inferior to that which is eternal. The great realities of life never change, and we have to begin to try to understand them. Life never ceases, and the dreams of death and birth relate only to physical realities. The great realities are immortal. The great realities are indestructible. The great realities are forever flowing streams of inspiration descending from the heights above to make fertile the plains below. Always the spiritual reality is our source and our ultimate. It is the presence with us. It is the power that sustains us through every emergency of life. It has a strange compact with the beating of the heart, and it also has a tremendous influence upon health and happiness and security. Mencius, the great Chinese sage, talked of the child heart, and Confucius was of the same mind, namely that in the reality, the great reality of things, the child heart dominates. The body grows up and grows old, but the child heart is part of the reality that is eternal. Most people forget that while the body is aging, the soul is not aging. The soul is always not only young, the soul is always full of joy and of hope. Just as little children have their great moments of sorrow and forget them quickly, so life has its misfortunes, but the reality recovers quickly, and it is only the lower mind that clings desperately to its own mistakes. So the child heart is the heart of hope. The child heart finds the world a garden. The material heart finds it a prison. The child heart loves the beautiful, and the material heart is afraid of beauty or is disinclined to cultivate it. The supreme spiritual heart has no losses, but the material heart suffers loss and gain in the alternations of society. Therefore, actually, what we are trying to do is to call upon that which is best to help us to control the personality and the daily struggle for existence. We have this in religion as the great hope. Religion is the power which is vested in the superior reality and which descends as a gentle mist or rain upon the earth to make it fertile. Today in politics all over the world, we find that materialism is determined, if possible, to destroy the inner reality. The materialism merely wishes to enslave the body and to bend the mind with its various aptitudes to an industrial psychology of wealth. Therefore, every time the mind takes over and sacrifices the spirit for its own advantages, we find trouble. We find it in world affairs. And we find now that materialism as such has so disproven itself, and the mind with its plans and strategies and subtleties has so deceived itself, that we are beginning to sense the tremendous importance of restoring the higher reality as the controller and director of conduct. When we do this, we can call ourselves idealists, whereas when we depend upon the lower reality for survival, we can call ourselves materialists. The materialist has very few advantages to compensate for what he has lost. He has lost hope and gained a few years of fame or distinction or built a new factory. But always the things that the materialist creates must pass with him. The idealist is dreaming, hoping, and building in terms of eternity. So as an idealist, we have to make every possible effort to restore man's recognition that there is a power behind life that is controlling it, that there is a reality behind life, which is not only a disciplinarian, but is also a great and bountiful spirit of generosity. So Santa Claus comes to be a kind of a symbol of the return to life of these things which are hopes. The Christmas tree is the symbol of immortality. Martin Luther is said to have been the first to put candles on it for the celebration of Christmas, and the candles were the stars and constellations. The symbol of the evergreen, or the sprig of acacia, is the sign of the restoration of life, that which lives through the winter. The pine remains green even in the heaviest winter seasons. This is the symbol of reality, rising out of and surviving all of the vicissitudes of physical climatic conditions, moral or physical. Therefore, the life in eternity is something each person has to cultivate, and he can do it. And he will find it very, very helpful for him to do it. He must accept the gifts of the upper reality, the supreme state, thankfully, graciously, and with dedication, and devote his life as far as he can to the release of the best of himself and its gradual converting of the lower personality. The great ministry is to convert the flesh to the will of the soul. And when it happens, it's not going to make us a group of very stuffy people either. It is not going to destroy the joy of life any more than childhood has destroyed the life. We are told by Christ that heaven is for little ones. The children shall inherit all things. Well, the childhood is the simple child heart of Mencius. It is that which lives in hope and faith, believes in the good of everything, and by always believing in the good, makes the good finally the reality. So we can start maybe with New Year's resolutions. They're always considered appropriate to the season. A New Year's resolution generally lasts anywhere from a week to 2 weeks, but it's better than nothing. Some people now are too practical to attempt it because they don't want to fail. But sometimes you have to attempt it in order to succeed. Otherwise you never can. So there can be New Year's resolutions. And these resolutions will have to depend to a large degree upon each person's interpretation of the mystery of his own inner self. He will have to try to define what he means and what we all mean by eternal inner reality. If we want to accept this reality for what it really is, we know that it is eternal, that it can never be violated, that it can never under any conditions work evil, that it can destroy nothing that is good. In fact, it can destroy nothing, because nothing can destroy reality. And the only thing that realities can do is to preserve the immortal and eternal parts, truth, and principles of existence. So with this thought in mind, we can say to ourselves, as a New Year's resolution, that beyond all of our estimation, there is a universe that is eternally good. There is an infinite going on to beyond the boundaries of known time and space, and it is filled with life. It is part of a tremendous pageantry of eternal revelation. It is like the revelation of John on the Isle of Patmos. It is an eternal pageantry of divine processes. It is a continual proof that at the source of all things is a divine reality, and that this reality can be called God, it can be called truth, love, principle, law, whatever we want to call it. But it is a living reality. It is a living truth, not something written on a page. It is not only a living truth, but it is a living law, which is not something merely administered by a bailiff. It is something that administers itself out of its own eternity. All these things are real. And in the midst of this reality, we are the doubters. We just can't understand why things aren't better. We believe that we have done the very best we could, and that things should break so that we get what we want or we believe that we need. All this struggle to try to change things to our own convenience is a very serious mistake. It is up to us to transform ourselves into the embodiments of the eternal convenience of reality. We have to be that which reality requires. And when the interval between man's personality and the indwelling reality is crossed, then the individual has a new life in truth, which is difficult for us to even describe, but it is very, very important. So this year, let Santa Claus bring us, perhaps, another gift of insight, a gift of appreciation, a gift of understanding, and a realization that our problems are here because we have not understood them. That they are here because we have not used a correction on a level superior to the problem. Our idea of solving a problem is to be locked in conflict with it, when this can never work. A problem is never solved until the divine reality is established in the matter under consideration. When the reality is established, the problem ceases. It ceases because it is no longer questioned, no longer doubted, and no longer fought against. Now we could say, but how can we accept a reality such as nuclear armament and things of this kind that seem so terrible to us all? They can be accepted, but only on the level of a reality. And that reality tells us, first of all, of course, ultimately, that no creature that is considered or able to consider realities, who is able to have contact with his own inner life, can invent nuclear armament, or having invented it, can ever use it. But there is always this physical reality says that there's dollars in our pockets if we get there first. There will end, however, there will be neither dollars nor pockets. There will simply be another great sorrow. Not because reality is against us, but because reality is parental, and it has to affirm its own inevitability. And that inevitability is the inevitability of truth over love, truth over disappointment or disfigurement, love over hate. It is the victory of the reality in all things over the deformities of attitudes which we are constantly disfiguring. So it's the Christmas time. We can give ourselves a nice gift. We can give ourselves a little more patience to understand things. Now, patience doesn't seem to be very much of a gift, especially when we feel like being impatient. But it is a gift, because the impatience will only make sorrow for ourselves or others. It will only use up energy with no production. It will take attitudes that are utterly inconsistent with the religions we may follow. And we have nothing but the fulfillment of a grudge. And that fulfillment of a grudge is such a mighty joy that we can hardly wait to do it. Actually, it's nothing. We should be ashamed of wanting to do it. But we also should be ashamed that we cannot transmute that desire for the grudge into something more constructive, more beautiful, and more lasting. So this season of the year, we come to a time when we give allegiance to reality. We give allegiance unto many names. Peoples from the dawn of time have worshipped this winter solstice because it was the beginning of the motion of life back to its own immortal expression. It is a proof that things do not die, they only sleep. The love in our own hearts never dies, it only sleeps. It is often marked by such limitations that we place upon it that our love appears to be a hate. But it is not really a hate at all. It cannot be. For the moment it is no longer love, it is no longer valid, and it was no longer acceptable to the divine reality. So we could open the doors a little bit, maybe, at this season of the year, and do one of two things. A mental house cleaning would help. It is very important for us to realize that in the material world we have certain law and order that has to be maintained. Therefore, that we have to find ways of bringing this law and order into harmony with truth. Well, we have never worked very hard on it. Most people are perfectly satisfied to let the law and order fulfill their purposes. Therefore, we have more lawmakers than we have intelligent people, and we also have more laws than anyone can follow. And Solon, I think, is the one who said that laws are like spider webs, which capture small insects but allow the great ones to break through and escape. And this is our problem today. We have many laws, but not too many law-abiding people. We would like to be, but right in the middle of the time when we're beginning to feel a little virtuous, it seems strangely advantageous for us to do something else, to get back again to our own griefs and grievances. So as a kind of contribution to our Christmas thinking, let's take one firm step, that we are in a universe of reality. We are in an infinite pattern, all parts of which are working together for the infinite good of all that exists. But that we are here because we are in the place where we should be, and the lessons we face are the lessons we must face. We cannot go on as perpetual adolescents in the poor sense of the word. We cannot continue to disobey laws and have happiness. We are in a world now of nation after nation fighting, the millions of people terrified, terrorized, and destroyed by the ambitions of the mortal mind, of tyrants and dictators, militarists who want to conquer the world, but who can never conquer anything except the grave in which they're buried. So all of this great struggle goes on with no consideration for reality. The individual can consider reality, and he can realize that the thing that is happening is something that has to happen until man himself wakes up to his own problems. There is no such a thing as a person who can solve all of these problems on a level of government or on a level of sociology. The problem of reality is individual, and the individuality of it is like the spiritual individuality of the human being. Each individual has a life spark in himself. He has a unit of divinity which keeps him alive. And it is this unit of divinity that will never rest until he keeps peace and keeps in harmony with universal reality. The reality he has to live by is part of his own spiritual nature, part of his own existence. It is the same thing that keeps the heart beating. And when man is disobedient or destructive, the heart begins to show. It shows that it is perfectly possible for a human being to have a broken heart. And we have broken hearts when we break faith with realities. We cannot afford to go around in a world of uncertainties in which we are struggling desperately against inevitables. We are really moving around in a world of certainties, and these certainties are divine, and they will ultimately fulfill themselves. And we are able to make small contributions as we can to the purposes which nature itself has determined to be correct. So for many people, a Christmas is a gift of hope, and in many cases it is a sharing of love and faith. It is the individual overcoming for a moment the separation between his inner and outer life, and in so doing, overcoming the separation between himself and other human beings or nature in which he lives. The moment we rise above the mind, we rise above the tyranny of diversity. We get over all the prejudices that have burdened us for years. We have been prejudiced for thousands of years, but there is no evidence that these prejudices have ever produced any constructive results. We keep on having them because we like to find some way of blaming something else for the condition that we have put ourselves into by our own attitudes. Therefore, we have to realize that there is no answer to the problem of life that is real and is permanent and will go beyond the grave into the realities of eternity, except that we must rule all of the outer things. Law, as we know it temporally, must be under the sacred administration of divine love. And in the divine love there is a law, and that law is love. And only love can solve anything. Everything else only puts off the evil day or results in a psychological or physical ailment in ourselves. Love is law, the most important law of all. Ye shall love one another. This is coming down to us from the reality. Different religions name this reality differently, but it is a living thing in us. And to the Christian, the living thing in us is Christ in us, the hope of glory. To the Buddhist, it is the presence of the principle of the eternal Buddha. It is the Allah of Islam. It is the Tao of Taoism. It is the one principle which under all names is one thing. For all religions, all enlightened philosophy, all natural instincts, all qualities with which the individual is endowed at birth or before, all of these are under the sovereignty of love. And until we realize this, we are not going to get our problems solved. And we realize this as soon as we think good of things instead of trying to estimate what things are doing to hurt us. If it's sometimes necessary to absorb a hurt, and we do it every day when we love someone, we recover from slights and bruises and arguments and dissensions up to a certain point. Well, actually, the answer is that the certain point should never be reached. Because if we love, we do all things in kindness. Now, love does not mean that we have to cater to the impractical in other things. We do not have to allow other people to destroy our love for them. It doesn't make any difference how we feel about things. My old friend Dr. Bronson always used to say, he says, I love everybody, but I don't like what some of them do. And this may be our problem. Parents like the children, but they don't always agree with what the child decides he's going to do. But where it doesn't, then the parent can either punish it, which is wrong, or can try gradually to convince it through action and through understanding and through insight that it is making a mistake. Gradually, these things change history. And the reason why we have never had a nation yet that endures through all time, except it is one will be based upon love. When this happens, we don't have to worry anymore about toxins, and we don't have to worry anymore about interest rates. We have to consider that this world, if it is united in a commonwealth of love, guided by the divine wisdom at the source of life, all will be well. This divine wisdom we cannot change. Therefore, we might as well accept it and make use of it. Use it for the fulfillment of all that is necessary to keep this world healthy, happy, and well provided for. We cannot love truly and be selfish. We cannot be truly affectionate and endanger others by our own ambitions and our own perversities. So at Christmas, all these things should come home to us in a more or less definite manner. And somewhere Santa Claus in his sleigh is riding by, and we wonder how people came to believe at one time or another that he came down the chimney with a bag of good things, or that we hung up a stocking and he filled it. In the old days, he usually filled it with walnuts and fruit, or some simple things. Now it wants to be a very elaborate thing. But nearly all of these things are symbols. And today we are allowing too many people to believe that the gifts are realities. The gifts are not the realities. The realities are the appreciation that we may have, the gratitude that we may have, or the sincere joy of sharing what we have with others. But it has to be kind of worked out so that always the divine is the leader and we are the follower. If this can be done, we can solve a lot of problems. And in daily living, there's no reason why we can't go to work on ourselves. Each of us has a home, which is a little microcosm, a small social universe. Each one of us has jobs. Each one of us has attitudes which we can refine. We can become more and more conscious of the realities that we serve. Persons of advancing years are sometimes at serious loss on these matters. Therefore, Santa Claus might come down a few chimneys in that area of life and bring to older people who have retired from business and who are no longer concerned, basically, with the great struggle for living, who have some kind of income and freedom. These people must keep love alive. And love for them may be that they, having freedom, bestow time and energy upon those who are in need. To settle back and rusticate on retirement is not good. The individual loses the participation in the universal mystery. So every person who is able to do so, when no longer bound to the responsibilities of a job, should also become a contributor to the world in which he lives, must do something to prove love to the day he dies. He cannot just simply settle back and wait for the eternal reaper, because if he does, he will have a sad and forlorn and empty life. What he must do then if he is reaching the point where he is going to retire or is is going to be regularly engaged, to turn his love generously upon those who need, to find things that need doing, to find the advantages of service and sharing, and doing something every day of his life as a gift to that which is eternal. The reality in us must work always to the day we pass on. It can never settle down and do nothing. To do this type of thing is to betray the reality within ourselves. As long as we are embodied, this body must be dedicated to the service of others. Otherwise, we get into trouble and have a bad time of it. So everywhere we turn, reality is a way of life. It is a tremendous, inevitable fact. It is a universally diffused way of existence. Reality belongs to the stars and the galaxies and the Milky Way. Reality governs the anthill, and it also governs space itself. All these things are realities. And these realities are difficult to understand, but we have to finally reconcile the fact that every reality serves good in some way. And that if we can serve good in our way, we are then serving a greater reality. So a dedication of our own lives to forwarding all of the virtues that we know about, proving conclusively that we can rise above all the grudges and grievances that we have nursed, that we can rise above fear, which is nothing more or less than a physical interpretation of doubt. There is no fear in reality. Reality is certain, and that certainty is good. So little by little we can create a personality or an integrity that will serve us well, not only here, but usher in us into a larger reality than we have ever experienced up to now. We can all become part of a great giving, a giving in honor of God and of truth, a giving of which the universe is the great example, and a giving which is perfected in the heart of man and brings him into harmonious relationship with universal integrities. Well, folks, a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to you all.